So we're going to bring on Kemba Hubbard, and she has a book called Missing Daddy. I believe it is Missing Daddy. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her book and how she became part of the Peace and Freedom Committee. So we want to unmute so we can hear you.
I think she noticed it as soon as she said
I
hi.
was like, they can't hear me. I'm so excited.
Excited.
So,
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
yeah, thanks, Kimba, for being part of the show. Before we get started, our final guest, so her last name is Hubbard.
Yes, I noticed
You
that.
notice that?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I don't know, you all might be kin, as they
It's
say.
possible. It's possible.
So anyway, you all maybe you can look each other up or communicate afterwards and find out. Because that was just coincidental,
I
was it?
told my mom that was something that we both had the last name Hubbard out of all the authors that you all interview. So,
Right, right. So how did you become part of the Peace and Freedom Committee? What motivated you to when Laura reached out to say yes?
well, I was not born and raised in Marion, Ohio. My mother was. So we moved to Marion in 2016. And I quickly became aware that Miss Laura was one of the pillars in the community. And she is a fantastic lady, as you can see, a woman of vision. And so I don't say no to her hardly at all. So when she asked her, Miss Rita asked me to join, I didn't think I was going to be in the role that I was in. I was just saying yes because it was Miss Laura. So, I said, well, I'll do this supportive role or this supportive role. And Miss Laura said, no, I was thinking more that you would be an author. So I did, the good Christian thing. And I said, well, I'll pray about it. And so when I prayed about it, I did actually get the outline for the book. So then I was like, well, we'll just see how they respond. There were two authors in our group. I was in the Phyllis Wheatley group, which is pretty awesome because we know Phyllis Wheatley wrote poems while she was still
Yes.
enslaved. So the fact that I was in her group, I was pretty excited. So I shared, kind of this vision and kind of, that it was going to be a children's book. And the other author in the book said, that's interesting. When I was praying about it, I decided I want to write a book about a little boy whose mom was in rehab. So Miss Laura and Miss Rhea just took off with that, honey. So then I was hooked from then on. I couldn't get off the hook.
Oh boy. So your book is called Missing Daddy, Living
Yes.
Life While Daddy's Away.
Yes.
And so was this inspired by personal experience?
No. Although I know a lot of people, as you see, I have my little vinyl sticker.
Yeah, you were a finalist
Um,
with this marriage.
so I've been an educator for over 25-ish years. And so this is built upon my experience as an educator. I have seven godsons. Three of them have been in the juvenile justice system. I had children live with me, and their father also, they kind of lived this through with their dad. So it was kind of on that experience. And then the reason why it ties to Marion, ladies, because we have a huge jail right here in Marion, Ohio. So it just kind of all fit together. This is one of those populations that doesn't get attention, doesn't have services sometimes. So I think that's why God had me write the book to bless this population and have a tool for their parents. So my goal and vision is to have this in every prison in Ohio and throughout the United States. So that's how I
That
think I would like to
that
use
fits
it.
so perfectly with what we were talking about earlier about children being able to see themselves. Because growing up, when we read children's books, it was always the perfect family,
Mhm.
mom and dad, white picket fence. We didn't, I think sometimes, well, in fact, I know that they weren't thinking about the child who didn't have a parent in the house or the child whose father is incarcerated. And so now that we're writing more inclusive children's stories, I think more children are starting to see themselves. So, and the fact that this wasn't your experience, but you knew it was the experience of many of the children around you, says a lot about yourself as well. It was very perceptive.
Well, as an elementary school teacher, I use books a lot in my classroom. And then with the children that live with me, I use books. So I just feel like books is a really good way to invite children into that conversation. I
Yes.
mean, I have one of the pages, one of the things that this young lady talks about, um, Lakeisha, is this icky feeling that she has and how she navigates this icky feeling. And so it's a tool that parents can use. And I want to say this too. Uh, the the young lady is named after one of my best friends, who has been in the juvenile justice system for over 20 years. She was a youth leader, and I keep telling her she needs to write her curriculum down and actually sell it because the way
Yes.
that she invested her lives in those young people. She still works there, not as a capacity as a youth leader, but the way that she did it was amazing. So that's part of the reason why I named the character was after one of my best friends. So yeah, it's just drawing upon all those experiences for this audience that we have.
Okay. So this in the book, is daddy incarcerated, or because missing daddy, daddy could be deployed, or
Yes.
he could be a person who travels for business
Well,
where
it's
he's away a lot. So
well, Miss Gwen, it's interesting that you said that because when people see the title, because I lost my father, they think it's my story. But no, Daddy actually, here you can see the police taking Daddy away. So he is actually incarcerated, and that is within the first couple of pages that you get the message that Daddy is away in prison.
I can
okay.
see this doing really well. You said there's a very large jail in your city.
Yes. So Marion Correctional Facility is very large, a jail. I wish Miss Vicki was here to give me all the facts about it, but it's been here for a long time. I don't know the level of security or anything like that, but I really wanted the illustrator to be from the prison. I thought that's what God wanted as well. We couldn't do that because of the red tape that we just encountered some things. But my illustrator is awesome. I love her. I found her through Miss Stephanie Bridges, who Miss Laura was talking about. But yes, we have a large facility. In fact, when I describe Marion to people, I'll often wait to the last descriptive. Then I say, where the men's prison is, and then they usually shake their head.
So it's like a
Yeah.
landmark.
Yeah, basically go to the men's prison and turn right or something like that.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
Dr.
I'm from New Orleans, and there's a pretty sizable jail in the middle of our city as well. And it used to be that the people who were incarcerated there could just look right out the window and just talk to you right on the street because that's how much in the city it is. And so it was kind of a way of, I wouldn't say a way of life to go to jail, but it was everybody knew about the prison. So I can imagine exactly what you're saying about Marion, about it being kind of that landmark.
Yes, ma'am, very much so. And when you drive past it, it just seems like it goes on for miles and miles and miles
Mm.
and miles. So yeah, it's pretty large. And then unfortunately, about 40 minutes down the road is Marysville, Ohio, and there is a women's prison there. So in this area, it's just, and then we have a couple youth facilities as well in this area. So yeah.
Hmm. So in the book, does he come home?
Oh, we're gonna do a
That'd be
spoiler,
a
Miss
spoiler. Okay, well, no, all
Gwen?
right, no, don't do a spoiler. I was
You're
saying,
asking for the end of the story.
well, if we could do it without being a spoiler, then she would let me know that. So we can't. So
Mhm.
that's fine. I just didn't know if the whole uh if she was missing daddy to the end of the book and then it ended or not. But you have to read the book to find out what happens. So
So one
that's
of the things
fine.
about the book, I get a lot of questions about the book because
Mhm.
Mama just makes these guest appearances because
Mm.
they all lived together and then they went to live with Grandma. Grandma's a woman of great wisdom, kind of like my mom and my grandmas and my aunties, just full of wisdom. And the Miss Laura's that God have put in my life. So that's what Grandma represents. So you just kind of see mom in and out, and then there's this whole father-daughter dance and getting introduced to Uncle Mike. So people are always asking me questions about Mama and Uncle Mike, and I say to them, I believe what God wanted me to do to be able to put your story in the story, right?
Mm,
How does it hit you? How, again, because these are talking points that I want people to have with family members, with their stepchildren and children and grandchildren. So there are some details out there that you need to plug in yourself about what happens. But I will tell you this: I had a dear friend of mine who is a prolific English teacher in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and he said he was very proud that I didn't make this a live happily ever after book. So I will throw
Because
that
not
out.
everybody has the chance to live happily ever after, or happily ever after can look different for a lot of different people.
Well, I think I feel like we're just kind of in this age where we are reevaluating what this American dream maybe is,
Hmm.
especially when we look at it from a perspective of purpose. Some of the most prolific Bible characters had a whole lot of stony roads and a whole lot of
Yes,
barriers and a whole lot of things. Maybe they
the Bible is
skeletons in
full of
the
imperfect people.
in the closet. Maybe they didn't want to talk about. And so I
Mm.
think that's important to talk about how, even the way Mama described it, that Daddy made some bad decisions. And so, how do we recoup from failure? How do we recoup from bad decisions? What does that look like? How do we live in the middle of messiness?
Yes.
And so that's kind of what was in my head as well as I was writing the book.
So as you write more books, are you going to stick with this theme? Because you said there's also a women's prison not far away. So, have you thought of doing a missing mommy type version?
Well, Dr. Rhonda, I really wasn't, this was like a one and done, but like Miss Laura said, I was, after I finished writing this book, I got an outline for another book. It's not a continuation, but the next book is called it doesn't really have a title yet, but basically the theme is don't gaze at what I am, but who I am. So it's
Mm,
about a little girl named Kiana and about different individuals Kiana met every year in school who had different cultures, looked like different than her, talked different than her, ate things different than her, and how she reflected upon that and learned that, as Dr. Martin Luther King has shared with us, we don't judge people by their cover, right? By their characters is how we get to know people. And this really reflects my story as well, growing up biracial in America, not being often Black enough, definitely not part of a white society. Like, my elementary years, my middle school years, were always trying to find that identity and where I fit and what that meant and what I was supposed to act like. And, when people roll their eyes at me because I had curly hair, and then other people wouldn't look at me because I had curly, like, what do you do with all of that? And so
right.
Kiana's story is about how she meets different people from different cultures. And again, it reflects Marion as well. She meets a little boy who is Hispanic. We have a Latino Hispanic population in Marion. She meets a young lady from Vietnam. We have a Vietnamese population. She meets a young boy named Levi, who is he is part of the Jewish community. We have a Temple Israel here in Marion. So it also reflects this community, but community at large, right? We all
Right.
have those stories. And so that's what I feel like God told me my next book is going to be. So that is what I'm working on.
Sounds like your stories reflect America.
That's kind of how I feel, but that is my own personal journey. I don't want to put that on anyone else, but yeah.
Hmm. I'm wondering, is there a way, and I have no idea about this, but since your book discusses people whose fathers went to prison, is there a way to gift the books to the children of the people that are in the prison?
I've been thinking about that too, Miss Gwen, because the Angel Tree Project
Yes,
is
we have
geared
that at our
toward,
church.
right,
Mhm,
they're geared toward, that's their whole goal. And
mhm.
also at one of the events Miss Laura was talking about, I met a lady who had me connect. I've been trying to connect with a young lady in Columbus, and that's what she does every Christmas. Because
Mm,
she was incarcerated, so she does the same type of thing but does it locally. So I'm trying to connect with her because yes, I think that would be ideal to get it in the book, get it into the hands of children.
Yeah, that angel tree, hooking up with the angel tree project. If there's any way you can get to, letter writing is a lost art. Like we were talking about that earlier. If there's any way that you can find out who the decision maker is. Normally, the decision maker's at the top, and even if they're not at the top, whoever it is will take the directive from the person at the top. So it's better to start at the top, because that way you eliminate the middleman. And if they say it's a go, then it's a go. It goes all the way down to all the different
Or
levels
get the
of
person who
management.
thinks they're important because they like to pretend they're the decision maker.
Yeah, I've never tried that route, but I'm sure that could be a strategy.
Well, I
Yeah,
always tell I always tell individuals, when you go into schools, make sure you're friends with the secretary because usually they're the
exactly.
ones of the most influence.
They
So
know,
they
yeah, they
Yeah,
know
know.
everybody.
they know everybody, and they can control the how communication is passed and who sees what, and they can direct you to whomever. That is so true. So, for missing daddy, do the children in your book, are they discussing it with their friends? Like what, do you broach that subject?
Well, she does meet a young lady named Hannah when she first gets to school. So here's a picture of Miss Hannah. And
I saw that picture. Mm.
yeah, so here Hannah's asking her if she's going to come to open house, and she says, "No, I don't know," because she doesn't know how she's going to get there. And so her and Hannah end up becoming friends, and it's not really in the book does she talk about it, but her and Hannah do share a lot of things together. So with the dance with Uncle Mike, we found out that Hannah's father can't come as well because he has to work. So Hannah has to come with her grandfather, and Lakeisha has to come with her uncle.
Okay.
Mm.
And so they bond over these issues that aren't quite the same, but they can carry with them the same feelings,
Right.
even though they're different experiences.
There's a parallel there.
So your characters are so cute. I'm loving the little Afro puff
Oh my
with the
goodness.
braids
Little
coming
So
down.
I
braids
just
Yes.
have to
down.
give a shout out to Miss Aaliyah. And again, when we connected with Miss Stephanie has written a couple of books. Her books are so unique because they are around her children's. She's written several books, but a couple of her books are around her children. She writes them kind of based on their personalities. It's so intriguing. But she worked with illustrators who graduated from our Columbus School of Design. So she really started like Miss Ria and Miss Laura were like the brainchild, and then we got these feet. We got connected with Miss Stephanie, and that's how I got Miss Aaliyah. And she was a graduate. She wasn't working as an illustrator at the time, but Miss Stephanie invited her into the project. So remember, I'm still kind of like pouting with God because I don't have this prisoner illustrating. And I remember the first time I saw her illustration. Funny you said that. She had a couple of hairstyles, and I literally got chills because the illustration were beyond what I could imagine. Like Aaliyah, she's had some kind of gifting and anointing because she knocked it out of the box for sure.
Another important reason for a community. I mean, it seemed like everything you all need is right there. So even though we were joking about there being nothing to do with Marion, and the fact that you have such a community where everything you need is right there, a lot of people in bigger cities don't have that. They have
Yes.
to reach a little further for that.
Well,
So
and
that's great.
Dr. Rhonda, it's interesting that you said that because my experience is a little bit different. I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio. It's a little
Okay.
bit smaller than Columbus or Cincinnati or Cleveland, but it's in the top 10 when it comes to cities in Ohio. And I would come to Marion every Thanksgiving because again, my mom is from Marion. And my story is so my mom and aunt went to the Catholic school here, graduated with, I don't know, my mom will put in the chat 40 people or whatever. So when my mom went off to college, my aunt went off to the University of Dayton, my godmom. She's African American. So my mom went to visit her one day. My dad was a student at the University of Dayton, and here I am. So I grew up in Dayton until we moved back in 2016. And if you would have told me when I was in my 20s that I would move to Marion, I would say, honey, the devil is a lie. But
Mm.
um, when I moved back, because we had to move back because of life circumstances, what I found was a lot of community. So yeah, I had community. I mean, my god kids are there, some of my friends are there, a lot of coworkers.
Yeah.
But since I've been here, I have a really tight knit workout community. I have the real tight knit Miss Laura, Miss Kathleen's community. I have a real tight knit church community. And so it's really interesting in this small town how connected I am with different communities and how nice that is, especially for what I was going through at the time when we first moved. It's like God, set you where you need to be. So there is something to be said about the community here in Marion.
Well,
Yeah.
you said it. I mean, I think it's a beautiful testimony of the community that you're living in.
Yeah, and small town living.
Yes.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
different because I know I live in Houston, and Houston is so big and spread out that when you first get here, it's hard to meet people unless you have people at work. It takes a while to find your niche of people unless you have people you work with, and even finding a church is not automatic because there's so many churches
Hmm.
all over. And you know professional organizations or sororities and fraternities, that's another way that you meet people. But Houston, it takes a while, and I've heard that from just about everybody that came from somewhere else that moved here, that it took them a while. And when I moved to Houston, I was the only Black person, and my coworkers were not friendly, let me put it like that. So it took me a good while, but then it all worked out. So, but it just takes a minute. And small town, in a small town, everybody knows your business, as they say, you know.
That's why you got to be careful.
Yeah. But I have the advantage because I'm not a Marionite, and it is not quite that small. But you
Mm.
do run into people who know people, so you do have to always have your P's and Q's. But I think growing up, it used to be really funny. We would come and just be coming in town, and we stop at the Walmart and see one of my family members. Like that used to just crack me up. Like, how can we see a family member? We're just stopping at Walmart. It never happened at home in Dayton. So when I go home, it's hard for me now. I mean, Walmart is like 25 minutes, away at home, and Myers is like 30 minutes. Like, what is going on? And Marion, it takes me 6 minutes to get to Walmart and 8 minutes to get to Meyer. And don't talk to Miss Laura. If I tell her about going somewhere, she's like, that's on the other side of town. So it's like it is a different type of a living, but there's some advantages for sure.
Yeah, less stress for sure.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I think it was a study that people who live in smaller communities live longer. I think there is some science behind that, and it has to be stress related. So, what are your goals with the Peace and Freedom Committee going forward as a member, or I guess a part of the writing group? That's what the people who've been on the show said. They're the writing groups. What do you hope to contribute and get out of it for
Oh,
the?
I mean, Miss Gwen, I've already gotten so much out of this. The Peace and Freedom Committee has been so supportive, not just with getting the books published, because as you know, there's a lot of steps to that, but just being in the writing groups where we could support each other, bounce ideas off of each other, just grow as authors. Like this is beyond what I ever thought I could do. And just the opportunities. I mean, they support us when we want to go to events, and then we have, we meet different connections, like we talked about at an event with Miss Stephanie's event is where we met Miss Valerie. So just all these connections that we're making. I didn't know they were going to announce the book at my job, but through that I was able to do a book reading with a classroom. So I mean, it's just pulled me out of my comfort zone to
Mhm.
and one of my funny stories is when I first heard someone ask me about being an author, I wasn't even talking. Thank goodness my mother was standing next to me and she was like answering the questions because it really hadn't sunk in, even though this has been a 4-year process. So it's just learning how to be out of my comfort zone, how to really step up to what I believe God is calling us to do. So I want to support the Peace and Freedom Committee because I believe in what they're doing. And Miss Lorden talk about all the events. It's not just the scholarship. They have a hats off luncheon, I believe Miss Kathleen talked about, where they honor women in business. They honor women who've overcome challenges. They have another Juneteenth event where it's based around health and minority health, which you know is a whole big deal in our community. So I mean, just Miss Laura's yes to do this. I want to support them any way that I can, but I have also grown in the process as an author, which is why I really wanted to do the second book. I believe the second book even fits with the Peace and Freedom in their mission, which is, I have it written down so I could read it. So the mission of the Peace and Freedom is an organization dedicated to promoting unity and education among youth and individuals of all cultures. And so I really want to help promote that in the Marion area, in Ohio. And like you said, Dr. Rhonda, with my new book, in the United States of America, I mean, we could do with a little bit more unity. We could do
Yes.
with a little bit more, like Dr. Martin Luther King said, in which Kiana will talk about in my second book, like his vision was that we would sit down, boys and girls of different colors, around this table, having conversations, appreciating differences, but finding a place sitting at that table where we can also appreciate how we're alike, which is how I grew up in this diverse culture, Black and white. I mean, I don't know how much farther you could get. My parents got married 3 years after it was the Supreme Court found it to be illegal in 1970. My parents got married 3 years after that. So, you know, I do think there is a move in this generation, not that we don't look at culture, appreciate culture, realize it, but also just be open to connecting in a place of unity as well.
Wow. So
Yeah.
this has ignited a huge purpose inside of you, I can already tell. Do you think that you eventually want to write a book separate from the program, or are you going to just stick within the writing group?
I really don't know. I don't know where God is going to lead me. I've always wanted to do some writing and research on grief because I don't believe we grieve in America, in a society in the United States the way. And when I say grief, I mean we have funerals, but we don't really grieve. I don't think we don't grieve miscarriages. We don't grieve divorce. And so I've always like since I was in my 20s and in school and going through graduate school, always have had an interest in that. I've had an interest in dealing with burnout,
Yeah.
especially with educators. So I don't know where if God's leading me to workshops or if that's going to be some kind of writing. I don't know where he's going to lead me, but there are some subjects I'd like to dive into.
Okay. Well, show your book cover one more time so people can see Missing Daddy, and you can order it online, I'm assuming. Oh,
Amazon,
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 or your website, your organization's website, which I think
Barnes and Nobles,
independent.
Amazon.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and the link is in the chat for anybody who'd like to order the book now.
Mhm. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being a
Thank
guest
you,
on Black
ladies.
Authors
I have
Magic TV.
so been looking forward to this opportunity. So thank you. And I hope and pray I can come to Houston and be a part of the festival one day.
Would
Well,
love that.
plan early for next year. You got a whole year to plan. It's October 23rd to the 25th next year. So just plan ahead and you can make it happen. We'd love
Okay.
we'd love to
I'd
see
love
the whole group. Maybe you all can get together and come as a group. That would be great.
I will definitely advocate for that, Miss Gwen. I will
Okay.
advocate for that.
Okay. Okay. Thanks so much for being a guest on the show and
Thank
continue
you, ladies.
success with
Thank
your
you.
writing
Thank
and
you.
the committee.
Thank you. Have a blessed evening.
You
You
too.
too. Bye-bye.